ladies and gents, here we are, at the end of it all.
I am having a very bad day. I am in no mood. This, today, is one of the worst days that I've had in a long time.
That was me on the day of this recording. We recorded this conversation last Sunday when I drove back to Athens just to go to work because all of classes had been canceled. And then I worked that night, and then all bars and restaurants closed in Ohio. So that's how that went. And here we are, facing the apocalypse, living in my parents' house now, back in hometown USA. And, surprisingly not that bad. And another good thing is instead of in the background of these podcasts, that you're listening to now, you get to hear, instead of, the drunk college kids partying and a bunch of cars and whatnot, you get to hear, like, birds and occasional cars, but, children running and yelling and dogs and whatnot. I don't know if that's better. Probably not, but... but yeah, and then... it was a bad day that day, because then he came back, we were having a good time, and I realized that I didn't have my charger for my laptop because I left it in freaking hometown USA, and then, so you can tell halfway through this recording, about 20 minutes in, we have to switch over to my phone recording, just because I was so dumb. I'm just like, we're just going to record it on my phone and keep doing it, which is kind of awful, because that's kind of when the meat of the podcast starts, in my opinion. This is my friend Evan Williams. We work together. I just met him like last year, at the end of last year, and we just kind of clicked. He's one of those guys. Oh, he's just such. So, when you want to hang out with somebody, especially somebody that you're not used to hanging out with a lot, you don't want to really put in like an effort into, going somewhere to hang out with them and like making, a whole night or whatever. Maybe the first time, but after a while, it's just like, but the first night that we kind of worked together and planned on hanging out afterwards, I was tired, obviously, and he was too, because we worked together, and, I didn't know if he wanted to go out to the bars, or if he wanted me to go over his place or something, but I was like, yeah, I'm just headed back now, like, getting changed, and then he texted me, and he was like, okay, yeah, you want me to just come over, you want to go out to the bars, or do you want me to just come over, and I can bring some beers, and we can hang out at your place? I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. So he made the effort, and that's just from that point on, and we had some roof time, and of course, roof time is the best time, and we just had a great night up on the roof, and talked, and hung out, and whatnot, and so he's also really, really intelligent, because he explains his major in here. It's like more than a nurse. I don't know. I listened to it over again, and you kind of understand that. You can just tell when he kind of talks about this stuff, he turns into another, he switches on something in his brain, and you could just feel, I don't know, the energy he has for it, which is awesome. And, so I wish that, for that part of the conversation, the microphone would have worked, because, I don't know, he just really, he just deserves better, too. He's just a really nice guy, and, but, yeah, we were at the end of, after this one, again, it was the end of a shift, especially it was our last shift where we had talked about the coronavirus so much, and COVID-19, and he, came over to me, and he was like, yeah, I'm free to talk, we can talk about anything, whatever you want, besides the COVID, because I just cannot do that, I cannot do that anymore, and I was like, you know what, that's fair, and I have some words about COVID that I'll put in after the whole conversation, if you want to tune in for that, too. But yeah, this is my friend Evan Williams. Patterson. I just call him Evan Williams sometimes because we work at a bar. Anyways, Evan Patterson, ladies and gents, and others. All right, everybody. Evan Patterson.
Try this again.
Podcast, take 2. We actually, I don't know if I still haven't listened to it. I don't know if I want to.
Don't do that to yourself.
We recorded a, an episode a couple weeks ago, and we were high. It was
blitzed.
blitzed. There could be some good content there. I think
I'm
it's
sure
mostly
there's
just
some gems mixed
some
in the middle,
gems.
but like we're not searching through that rough.
Yeah,
Like, that is not
right.
far from
And we
ideal.
didn't even like cover the main topics: the booze, booze, and booze.
We should have covered the booze, and booze. Starting with the booze, though. I had a hilarious conversation today with a few people at the bar, and for those of the listeners that don't know, we actually bartend together.
Right, booze.
The booze part.
Yeah.
And there's always that like one drink I feel like everyone has that is like the one that like they either got sick on or just like makes them nauseous thinking about. Everybody has that one.
Yeah, for sure.
And we were talking about it today, and one of my main ones was schnapps.
Ooh, really?
Ooh, yeah, because it was high school, you know, everybody, you always just go
Oh, that's
with
fair.
whatever you can drink. And
The
I was,
sugar,
no,
the sugar
no,
content.
go for it. No, go for it. But I was with one of my really good friends, and it was her parents were out of town, of course. They did the classic high school story, so I was over at her place, and they were having a party, and I had way too much peach schnapps, got sick.
Nice.
So, of course, the next day, I come in, and she goes, how's it going, schnapps? So she calls me
man.
schnapps now for, like, years. But it was so funny, because I was talking to these people at the bar, and it was like, that was kind of like one of my main ones. The other one is hilarious. I was probably like about just turned 18. I have 2 older sisters, and one of them is throwing a Halloween party.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say throwing up.
Yeah, just her.
Yeah.
She was throwing a Halloween party, and she made a really great like caramel apple cocktail, and she put it in one of those like serving things like that you have at like
like a punch bowl.
Yeah, not a punch bowl, but like for grad parties, like little dispensers, you know, it kind of stands like
Oh,
like,
yeah.
little jokes,
They
like
usually have,
iced
like-
tea in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fruit.
one of those. And so she actually had like a whole lot of fresh fruit in it, and it went down to that like point in the spout, like, you know, like there's like a good couple inches left, but you can't really tell when you're just like looking at it, and all the fruit was covering it up.
Right.
And so my now brother-in-law, my sister's boyfriend at the time, looked over and was like, fucking bet you can't drink that. And of course I'm like 18, so I just swell up. I'm just like, woo! Fucking bet. And so that's the last thing I remember.
Ever. Just ever.
Because there was so much more in there than I thought there was. Because all the fruit covered it up at like the certain just like that level.
Yeah,
covered up the
definitely.
spout. But there was so much more booze.
Oh man.
Still like in between all of the fresh fruit.
Yeah.
And oh my god, it's probably not my best moment. So I was in the middle of the line in the driveway, and somebody was trying to get out. Mm-hmm. And something I'll never do is probably drink and drive. It's just something I'm against. And so of course I'm in my mind I'm thinking, you know, well, I'm not going to risk other people by letting my tires touch the road. So I woke up the next morning, looked out the front window, saw my car parked, not well, diagonally in the middle of my sister's front lawn. Just like,
No, it was in the lawn.
I just apparently was like, I'm not gonna touch the road. I'm just gonna fucking whip it right over here and leave it. That was the natural response.
It got out of the way. It was definitely the quickest and easiest way. I mean, you figured that out.
I'm not gonna stand by the decision.
Yeah. And you were probably in the car the shortest amount of time, you know?
Ideally.
Wow. That is, so nothing fruity.
No, but I was serving a couple people at the bar, and it was hilarious, especially the other day. I was making a mojito for a young woman, and she was like just turned 21.
Ugh.
And I was like, kind of like more or less explaining the cocktail to her. So I asked her like what kind of rum she wanted in it. I was like, Bacardi, okay? She goes, whoop, and just like covers up her mouth. I was like, it's okay.
It's one of those.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Like, believe me, I get it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Obviously, and she was like, obviously I've just recently gotten sick from a crash like in front of her parents.
Dude, that's like gin for me, man.
Gin?
Yeah, because the first time I drank it, dude, on like an empty stomach, I don't know. It just like hits your soul.
It's such a soft spirit, but like it has that like zest.
Yeah, some sort of
gets you.
sassiness that just like.
It's just a Timberlake in there. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah, man.
I feel like everybody has that like drink.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
like, can never
and I
go
think
back
Four
to.
Loko is mostly that for most people.
For
For everybody.
Oh my god, everyone has a Four Loko story. Probably one of my favorites is I was visiting my friends in Columbus. It's great.
This is great.
And I, of course, I was probably about 19, and I decided, I was like, it's a Four Loko kind of night. We're playing Pong, and we went to a kid's, get this, dropout party.
Oh.
So his friend was dropping out of college, and so they decided to throw a fucking rager in their dorm room. And so,
I mean,
right?
That's fitting. Very fitting.
And I just remember, so we ended up going to this bar called Big Bars in Columbus. And poor girl I was talking to, I ended up talking to her for hours. I was just fucked up. Like when you're like super drunk, like time just out.
Yeah,
Like,
and you can just talk for hours about nothing
completely
at all.
gone.
At all.
And I just remember at the end, this one guy coming up to me, poking me on the back and saying, it's 2:30, yada yada, like closed down for like half an hour. I literally just remember thinking in my head, I was like, well, I am incredibly intoxicated and incredibly underage. So I just turned and walked out. I literally left her friend.
Man.
Didn't even like, probably was probably talking for like hours. And I just like literally
Just gone.
just out into the snow.
Not even a goodbye.
I run into this guy named Kevin. He was somehow probably drunker than I was.
Oh, okay.
And he had a fight with his girlfriend. And so I bumped into him. And he was like walking through college. This is again at OSU, and I have no fucking clue where I'm at. And I was like talking to him. I was like, hey, you know where like Draca Tower is? Like, bro, I got you. So I was like, cool. So after hearing his entire story of all the shenanigans and shit that happened with his girlfriend, he gets to his destination, and he was like, oh yeah, Dracket, just go to the parking garage.
Oh no.
At this point, I am looking with one eye into my like Google like maps.
Just wobbling, standing and just wobbling back and
My phone ends
forth.
up dying. I go all the way to this parking garage. It's in the distance. I'm like, this.
It's there.
It's not like I have Sauron.
You're like
journey
crawling up the
destination.
mountain.
Seriously.
It's just like
I can't
the
hear
strawberries. Do you remember the strawberries from the start?
But for real though, it was fucking cold.
Yeah.
And I finally get to this parking garage. Get it?
And that's not even your destination.
Wrong parking garage.
Oh,
And
no.
it's literally like I mean, we're used to like OU where it's, you're across campus, you're like maybe 20 minutes away.
Right.
I was a good 45
Oh,
minutes of walking
no.
away from my destination.
Damn.
Finally get to the door my friends were in. Both were as drunk as I was and just like out cold. I like walk in.
I'm surprised you made it back. That's impressive.
I am very proud of
This is off of Four Loko too.
This was off of quite a lot more than Four Loko.
Right, but that's where it starts. Right?
And so of course they go in. The RAs are like, "Well, yeah, we can't have just like some random guy like looking for his friend's room."
Yeah.
So if you want to like try to figure out a way to contact them, that'd be cool. But you can't have you walk around. So anyways, long story short, I end up getting an Uber, going home, and just like waking up the next morning. No clue. It was like one of those like hangover moments. Like it was like where you like piece your whole night together.
Yeah.
Like I got a text from one of my friends. Apparently, while I was drunk and walking by, a guy was walking out of the gym, and I said, "Have a good night, beefcake," or something. I took real exception to that.
Honestly,
honestly, he was a beefcake. I thought it was a compliment.
I think so.
He didn't enjoy it.
Oh man.
And so like I got that text from my friend telling me of like this whole altercation that I had with this random
With a
gentleman.
beefcake?
With a genuine beefcake.
Genuine.
Like, what a good guy. Good work, man.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those nights like where you just like have to like piece together like
Oh,
every
yeah.
every single thing that happened.
Right. I think I've only had those with and from Four Locos.
I think that's honestly like a part of like the
Four Loko
It's like
experience.
search and general warning. We'll have too many stories.
Yeah.
Four Loko story is coming. Yeah.
One of our friends here actually, they had a hemp flavored Four Loko.
Oh, that sounds.
And nobody wanted it. Nobody
wanted it.
Nobody wanted it. So they just sold They just had deals and so we have this trap house that our friend goes to OU. They bought 120 of these hemp Four Locos for $99, and now they just have them they have like a chair, like a Game of Thrones chair, made out of
Bud Light guy.
Yeah.
So, what is your gift to me today?
Except he's trying to give the four. He's like, they're like, drink this, please. Do you want, like, anybody that walks in? Do you want one? And they're like, no. I mean, anything. You just water it down. Put a little bit of Neos or something in it, like something. I don't know, anything to make it taste better.
Just a couple spritz.
The thing is, it's not that bad, but it doesn't. It tastes like Four Loko without a flavor.
If you're ever telling me in the context of the world of Four Locos, if you are telling me that one of those isn't that bad, that's pretty bad. That is not.
That's fair.
That is not for the faint of heart.
Do you think there's like a high class brand of Four Loko? No, never.
That is not at all the brand. I feel like that was a waste of marketing.
There's like a Four Loko, a premium Four Loko, and the top shelf.
I think there's Four Locos and they know their market. And it's like $1.50. It's like, oh god, no. That's you're never gonna have a Prius come out with like an electric Tesla model. It's always gonna be a Prius.
Right. So let's move on from booze to boo boos. Have you ever had any boo boos from booze?
Boo boos okay. So shout out to our coworker Ashley, who every single time she has ever held a knife behind the bar has somehow found a way to cut herself. I have no clue.
And that's not even with booze in her like system. That's just being around booze.
A reasonable amount of booze, if any. But no, all of mine come from the freaking spouts. So for the listeners who can't picture, we have a well that's down like next to our waist of like all the bottles. And there's like the metal spouts, of course, that come out on the top. And my big ass gorilla arms hang all the way down to them. And I'll like be walking by. And I haven't cut myself with the knife yet. But I have so many freaking nicks on my knuckles from just like smashing a bottle. And somehow it like breaks skin every time. And I just look like a fool. Because it makes... I was like, fool.
I look like
a fool. Yeah. Just because it makes so much noise just clunking like the entire line down.
And like it doesn't involve the customers, but they all hear. They all see. They know. And you're like, what?
So tonight was the worst thing that might have happened to me in a hot minute. So we have a kicking mule, which is a take on a Moscow mule.
It's so good.
It's killer. But it has jalapenos in it, and you muddle it. And it was kind of one of those moments you see in slow motion, but I fucking kid you not. I was muddling this jalapeno. One single drop comes from the jalapeno. And my eyeball went to Scoville 1000 immediately. Like, I literally watched this one drop somehow go from the cup all the way up into my eyeball, and I was just in.
It's like the SpongeBob where she's putting the Pasco. It's got like the evil face on it, and it's like and like in your eye,
dude. Probably. Oh, SpongeBob, dude.
But I was talking about boo boos like from getting drunk and then going out.
Oh, God.
And then going out, and like my roommate Miles, shout out Miles, from my freshman year, he would like come back. One day he just came back with his skin bandaged, like his chin completely bandaged, and he had a beard too, so it was like a bandage on top of the beard, and he was like, yeah. I got drunk and fell down some stairs outside.
I've seen some gnarly drunk accidents, but by far one of the funniest ones I've ever seen was I was seeing this girl who was actually like very, very coordinated. It's funny that this happened to her. She was actually like a figure skater, and so we gave her so much shit for this. But I was like just walking her home, like walking alongside of her, and I turned to one of my friends and was just talking to him. Turned back and this bitch is gone. Ooh. And I was like looked behind me and she whole ass fell into a manhole. Like just like walking down the road. And so it was there's like a whole like construction cones and like tape and everything around it. Somehow she just didn't see it. Just like walk straight through. It's like one of her feet like fell into the manhole and she like had like one hip still like one leg still out, and like we just turned around and come and like hoist her out, and she had a good old cut like along her leg and twisted her ankle, so I had to carry her all the way back, but literally just like turned to my side, and she was just no longer there.
Oh,
and
that's yeah.
that was a special one.
Yeah, luckily I haven't had, I'll wake up with like, some blood on my shin or something. Just some blood on my shin, but usually nothing like too intense. I haven't fallen down like a whole ass staircase while I was drunk. Yeah, luckily. Although, talking about, like boo-boos can be emotional too. I've gotten drunk and like
so many.
So many from being drunk where you're just like. You just say the wrong thing at the wrong time.
And you just, like, think about that for, like, a solid 2 years.
I don't want to get into the details, but there was this time, it was, like, one of my first times getting drunk, so no filter at all. I was completely plastered. We were drinking, like, blue vodka, whatever blue vodka is, with my friends, and we go out back, and I was saying it's pretty, like I said, no filter, just all cuss words, which, as a 16-year-old in a house... of middle class, you're not allowed to.
By a young, unfiltered Steve.
Yeah,
it just sounds.
It was bad, and so so the boo boo that I got, my sister was like, they were kind of like, she was with some older friends, and they were kind of like having fun with it at first, which I probably would have too, like some drunk 16-year-old, and then I must have said something. She's like, hey, come here. And I was like, what? And she's like, no, come here, lean close to me. And I was like, what? Just slaps the shit out of me. And I was like, oh, man. Yeah.
Oh, no.
And then the emotional boo-boo was that she told my parents, and we all got in trouble with that.
Perfect.
Sad.
Talking about boo-boos, though, one of my favorites, or so, I'm incredibly close to my sisters, but they still maintain to this day.
Oh, me too. By the way, I love my sister. We got over that. That was just,
Oh, yeah,
that was just one story. Right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
But anyway. Yeah.
And, oh, God, there's so many stories from my sisters. So, when we were younger, I forgot what I was gonna say, but I was broke my toe.
Ooh.
And that's what I was gonna say. My sister still maintained to this day that the reason why I became so big was just survival of the fittest. Beat the shit out of me.
Oh, man.
Just would wrestle all the time and fight. And of course, they were like 4 and 8 years older than me. Oh. So even back then, like
they just had the elder strength.
Yeah, there was no chance
at all.
It tells me around. Yeah. But I broke my toe, and of course, I was probably like 7 or 8 at the time. And Cover was broke my toe, and she was like, "Oh, well, you know what they do for those in the hospital, right?" And I looked up, I was like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, well, they flick him until being a little bitch," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Damn.
They flick him until.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah, your sister sounds awesome.
They're amazing. They're my favorite thing.
They are why you are.
It's so great now, just because, of course, they're both just really, really beautiful women. And it's so funny because you tell like stories about the way they used to be as kids. Just like both were just, or one especially was like very much a tomboy, very much rough and tumble type. But nowadays she's brilliant and like leading like a research thing up in Toledo for ischemic stroke and stem cell research and stuff like that. And
nice.
And so of course you tell these stories to people like, her? Like, yes, you don't know.
You don't understand.
You don't even get it.
You don't understand.
It's the same thing with like any sibling though. This is like you just see a whole different side of them growing
up. Oh yeah, it's the best.
They become.
Well, like I mean, Patrick was your like boss. You know what I
mean?
For me, I'm like, oh, he was the dude that threw snowballs at me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, yeah. Or I know him as the guy that's afraid of spiders. Like deathly afraid of spiders.
He's the guy that I keep on calling Pat because my my brother-in-law's cousin is Pat, and oddly enough, that sounds super far away from me, but we're actually really close.
Yeah.
So it's very.
But Patrick does not
hates
like
it.
It's his least favorite thing. Of all of the things that he hates, it's probably on the first one.
And it's always a fun thing for. It's so tempting for me just to not. When I find out that there's that small little thing that could just grind somebody's gears, and I can get away with it so easily, it's just unbelievably tempting for me not to.
Yeah.
It's like, hey Pat,
Yeah.
how you doing today? Have you been, man?
And he's like, you say Pat, and then he like looks at you with that anger, and you're like, Rick, Pat Rick. That's what I.
Pat Rick.
Yeah, you like try to call.
No, I just look at him and say, how's your day?
Yeah. I did kind of want to, since you're in the nursing major. What's like the full title of your major, by the way?
So I'm I'm in a 4-year track, so I'm going for my BSN, which is like a step above an RN, but they are kind of like the same position in a hospital, but one is it's a different course in schooling.
Okay.
So like with any kind of medical degree or anything like that, especially in nursing, you can kind of work your way through. There's lots of different levels, but BSN's kind of like your 4-year track straight through to like. It's more, how to put this. There's a large, let's say, controversy, debate amongst care and practitioners of what nursing should be. Should they be scientists or should they be a technician? Somebody that goes through the motions, doesn't really know the science behind it.
Right.
A BSN is much more focused on the sciences.
Okay. All right. So that's what I wanted to kind of get into, since you know so much about that. Like, just for we had the fun side of things. We can still talk. Keep it light or whatever. But... All right. So we are going to record the rest on my phone. So that's why the recording sounds.
It's got to roll.
Yeah, the computer died, and
one of those days.
Hopefully it's saved. I don't know, the coronavirus and then everything. Anyways,
it's a great afternoon.
Yeah. So informationally, this is what we were getting into. It was. Keep it light or whatever. We can have fun with it, but it's absolutely. Like informationally, like what people that listen are typically college kids and people that are experimenting with drugs or whatever. So it's like what's safe and what's not.
Oh, absolutely! I think that's such an amazing question because I had a lecture recently, or a seminar, I should probably say, from a psychopharmacologist who was a really interesting character, but. I think the really important part of the conversation right now is how drugs function in the brain, what they do, how they act, and what are their effects. And the thing is that I feel like a lot of times, especially nowadays, parents or for health in high school or whatever, all drugs are just kind of lumped together as drugs, especially if they're illegal. And of course, the primary one you'd be referring to is pot, as to separate from the pack. But the thing is that I feel like a lot of times, and we've all experienced this, especially just growing up with it, but when all the drugs are kind of lumped together, there's of course the types of kids that are going to experiment, self-destructive for whatever reason, and will try pot at a very early age and then go, oh, well, my parents lied about this one.
Yeah.
What else are they lying about? Are they lying about all the other ones?
Right.
And so, of course, the large part of what you're going to be looking at when you're talking about illicit drugs is the impact that it has on the body, the types of receptors that it acts on, and of course, there's so many variables with one, the individual, and two, the how it impacts the body just based off of what receptors it's acting on, what the drug is, because of course it's just like different parts of the body, and a big part of it is selectivity, is the most important thing to think about with drugs, because of course with any drug there's no such thing as like the magical bullet that can have an effect on the body that the body can't already have on itself. All drugs have to act basically as a neurotransmitter and have an effect that the body can already produce, because of course the body can't magically do something that it can't already do in itself.
Right.
So it has to have those receptors to bond to, but the thing is that all drugs, and cancer drugs are a fantastic representation of this, but selectivity is basically, this drug can act as this neuroreceptor, act on this receptor, but the thing is that that neurotransmitter has all these other systemic effects on the body. So like take opioids, for example. You have an opioid that's going to slow everything down, act on mu receptors, act as an analgesic, take away pain, but of course it's also going to slow everything else down, slow down your stomach, that peristalsis, that like natural processing of food through your body, and you're going to have constipation or things like that.
Right. You ever see Trainspotting?
Respiratory suppression is the big concern.
Right. But just real quick, in Trainspotting, he has to stop taking heroin for a second because he is like in trouble or something, and then he forgets about the constipation. He hasn't taken a shit in like a week.
Yeah, that's a real thing. You see that with patients all the time. Is just how much they've torn up their stomach just from taking opioids,
right?
Heroin especially.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like a really big part of what you're talking about in that whole conversation is selectivity, is the overall effects. That's why alcohol and opioids are so incredibly dangerous, because what you're going to be looking at is drugs that aren't selective have side effects because they act on other parts of the body than they're intended to. Both act on respiration, slowing it down. You have two drugs that are going to do that, and they're not just going to both have the same effect, but they're actually not just going to add on one another, they're actually going to kind of multiply.
Right.
Have a much more of a profound effect.
So like 2 downers is more dangerous than a downer.
It's not like 1 + 1 = 2, it's like 1 + 1 = 4.
Right.
And that's how you have
dangerous.
Exactly. That's how you
dangerous things happen to overdose and whatnot. So one that I think is really popular in mainstream is getting more popular. Shouldn't be, but Xanax. Mm-hmm. What is that considered? A stimulant? A downer?
No, it's not downer.
Oh, because it's anxiety, right?
Anti-anxiety. Exactly.
Anti-anxiety.
So
right.
when you take a bar, basically what you're going to be doing is it's going to be acting as a suppressant, essentially. So it's going to be trying to take away all that excess stimulation, but the thing is that when you don't have that, it's just going to have excessive suppression, if that makes sense.
Right.
And again, whenever you're taking these drugs not as prescribed, they're going to have a completely different effect than what they're going to have for the person that they're prescribed to. Adderall's another perfect example. So someone with ADHD, so it's a stimulant, so there's no such thing as attention, right? Mm-hmm. There's just a lack of distraction. So there's a part to the brain that essentially filters information, and that part of the brain is essentially decreased in its function for people that have ADHD. So when you're speeding everything up, what you're doing is actually speeding up the part of the brain that filters out distractions.
Okay.
So you're not actually increasing attention, you're decreasing distraction.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, definitely.
But of course, you're going to be speeding up the rest of the body as well. And in a person who doesn't have ADHD, it's all placebo. They're just thinking that that's making them concentrate more because they're telling themselves it's going to concentrate more. But really, they're just tripped out and strewn out and freaking out about their exam and just not sleeping.
Exactly. Right. And just not sleeping. Well, so it doesn't help stimulate another part of the brain at all?
Placebo is an incredible thing. You have people who can take historically even such things as like sugar pills, and then all of a sudden their condition goes away. It's like kind of like Twilight Zone. Yeah. And you can never. That's what makes all research incredibly difficult, because you have to be able to pinpoint it and say like this causes this because of this.
Right.
And when you have that variable in there, and especially with genetics, especially with there's all kinds of different variables that are also in play that you can never really say indefinitely that this doesn't work this way, just because of that. But to answer your question, yes, more or less, it depends.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. I don't know. That's just something.
Drugs are fascinating, though.
They're really crazy on how they affect your body, and not only because the effect that they have on your body, but because of the amounts of different, the variations and myriad of different types of drugs there are, and the amount of people that do all the different types. It's like
something I would love to go back to that you brought up earlier. That is the types and impacts that it has on the body, and how especially it can be very politically related where it shouldn't be. Drugs have effects, and of course those effects can be beneficial in multiple different ways. A prime example of that's very politically charged right now is methadone. Methadone is a long-acting, basically, opioid, and trying to make everything very easy to, I guess, take in, you can essentially look at it how it's a door halfway open, right? So there is agonists and antagonists when you're looking at a receptor. Some drugs, so drugs are either going to increase the effect that the body can have, or it's going to stop it or decrease it.
Right.
This drug specifically works as increasing it, kind of like an opioid does, but it only opens that door halfway. So you still have some of the effect of an opioid, but you're not getting high from it. But what that is going to do is, of course, stop all those opioid receptors from being able to be activated all at once. So essentially, it's inhibiting the activation of other opioids. So the way that it essentially works is for a patient that is recovering as an addict, they can go in, they can get their methadone treatment, they'll be able to function.
And will it help like the withdrawal symptoms?
Absolutely.
A little bit? Right.
You won't have the withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
Because you have the drug in your body.
Right.
But the thing is that you're able to function. You're able to move on with your day. You're still an addict. But you're able to have a job. You're able to move on. But the thing is that in this country we have this notion that it's a volition. It's weakness. It's
because you have to take a pill every day or something?
Exactly. Because you're still an addict. You're not clean.
Right.
You're not just getting over it.
Right.
It's not looked at as a condition. It's not looked at as an inevitability of just...
Right. They want you to go through the pain and the agony of withdrawal.
Yeah, it's kind of, the perfect little house on the hill. All of our people aren't addicts.
Yeah.
All of our people can get over it. All of our people are different. The view of the country is very different than the rest of the world.
Right.
Having somebody still be an addict every day, go in and get their pill and, move on is very much looked down on.
It's kind of messed up because people take like ibuprofen or a third of the world takes like herpes pills every day, and they're not looked down upon, It's like, and it's not like they're going around bragging like I take methadone every day, It's like it's just like it's their own personal vice that they are coping with, and like you said, it doesn't affect their everyday. They can go get a job, they can go, have relationships and get over it without having to fill that void of addiction. So yeah, that's terrible. That you were just making a really good point. It's like why.
Exactly, and it's definitely, it all goes back to how we view addicts. It all goes back to, we love to think that, our frontal cortex is everything. We are all in control. We're all big and mighty. But until you've experienced or understand those little back of your brain, those instincts, those reward circuits, once that gets a little bit off, you'll really realize how much your forebrain is not in control.
Really?
We are of course, we are very much governed by our instincts. We are very much governed by, but we just use the front of our mind in what's called cognitive dissonance. You want to make sense of everything, but you end up just processing everything that's going on to make sense of it. That doesn't mean that, again, your instincts and your desires aren't controlling you. It just means you're making sense of it. So an addict, you're not in control. You're absolutely going to do every single thing that you can to get that fix, and it's just the mind. And there's
so with people. So is it a genetic disposition?
Absolutely.
Okay, so people that are addicts that grow up without drugs, do they fill that with some other void while they're younger, and then it kind of grows into something?
Great question. So it's considered to be about 60% genetic.
Okay.
A lot of that is learned, though. So a perfect example would just be alcoholism. So my dad hasn't had a drink in 25 years. All of my grandparents were alcoholic. Everyone in my family is probably alcoholic except for me and my sisters. And the thing is that growing up with knowing that that's a part of your genes means you have the predisposition to become alcoholic. It doesn't mean that you were born alcoholic. Now, of course, there's neonatal abstinence syndrome or things like that, like where you have babies that are actually born with withdrawal. It's completely different. But when you have that in your family genes, a lot of that can be learned, and a lot of that can, again, as you said, be a genetic predisposition, but it's really tough to tell the line. Of course, and again, it goes back to, your daddy chews tobacco and drives his truck to work every day. You're going to end up doing the same thing.
Right.
And it's just a part of the world that you live in.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah. And just because you grow up, like you said, if you have that predisposition.
Exactly.
And you grow up seeing that every day. And
that was exactly what I worked with out on the ranch. Is like there was a lot of people that like just chewed tobacco and always had it in their truck. And so then their sons learned to always have it in their truck. And it's just like, it's probably a perfect example of it. It's a lot of times it's a cultural thing that's learned. But there absolutely is scientific evidence to suggest that there is a predisposition to physiological dependence on substances.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between dependence and addiction, though, of course.
Okay. So is there like a solution? I mean,
is there
like an easy solution? Obviously, there's never an easy.
To answer your question, no. There is not an easy solution.
Right.
The biggest thing that needs to happen is an understanding of what addiction is, an understanding of how it comes to be, and the best way to combat that is education. Exactly as the way we started this conversation with why drugs are scheduled the way that they are. And again, it goes straight back to marijuana. The fact that it's a Schedule I drug means that it has no medical benefits whatsoever, and it is completely detrimental.
Right. I mean, that's it's objective, right? It's like
it's very objectively incorrect,
right?
Empirically incorrect. The fact that, so full disclosure, my dad was battling cancer, and with the chemo and everything else, it's a perfect example of, it increases appetite, helps you sleep, decreases pain.
Right.
It's exactly what someone that's going through chemo needs, and I bullied my dad in trying to get him to smoke a little bit of pot. But the thing is that it absolutely, also an antiemetic, we don't really know why cannabinoids, which are like the pill forms, why cannabinoids act the way they do as an antiemetic or anti-nausea medication.
But they just do.
They do.
But we don't know why.
Nope.
Well, it's, something,
But as we're just learning why weed acts the way that it does, and it's really fascinating, is that it acts essentially as the neurotransmitter that functions as, like, the best way to put it is like the forgetting neurotransmitter. And that's, of course, really interesting when you apply that to why it has the impact socially that it does, and why it helps the people that it does. And, and the way that the person who's lecturing to us put it to us was really impactful, is he was like, who would this benefit? And, of course, all of us kind of sat there. I was like, I don't know who forgetting would benefit. But forgetting, just like anything else that happens in the mind, has a purpose. You do not need to know all of the faces that you see on the subway. You do not need to remember everything. And it was like the populations would help so much, of course, the patients with PTSD, patients that need to be able to let something go for a second, be able to get their mind at ease for a moment, has, of course, beneficial qualities that can't really be measured.
Right.
And to limit, especially, of course I'm going to get on my soapbox here, but limiting first responders, limiting our men and women in our armed services, people that need the drug.
It's part of their daily life to go through traumatic experiences.
Absolutely, and relive it. And that's something that, I love the way that you put that. Reliving it, going through things like that. I mean, it has
every day.
It has the same effect.
It's not only like a one-time thing. It's like you're enriching that part of that traumatic event over and over again. And I mean, it's the same thing with like bad, severe PTSD, where you may not be physically experiencing it, but mentally, doesn't it? Like
delusions, hallucinations. It was so fascinating. Is you look at a brain scan
of someone who's hearing something and somebody who's having an auditory hallucination. They're almost identical.
Really?
Your brain can't tell a difference. That's why it's so cool. So we're making so many large strides. It's so fascinating. Small little tangent is that the brain just takes in information, processes it, makes sense of it. So of course, like, you don't really know everything that's going on sensation-wise because your brain is always processing it. It's the same way, so you can't ever know that you are always looking at your nose. Is, you know, sensory adaptation. Your brain just processes it, and you're not conscious of all these things that are going on all the time. And what is so fascinating is that you can start putting in different inputs, and that while the brain just processes it, it doesn't make a differentiation. So that's why we are able to have things like the shock pads that go on people's tongue that act as hearing, and it'll like shock different ways, or there's like shock pads that go on someone's chest and back, and they'll shock in a different way, and then they'll take in that stimuli, and over time they'll learn what those words are, and they'll be able to like listen and then write on the board what someone's saying just by feeling the little shock sensations. Of course, it's just going to the mind, and the mind doesn't make any difference. Same as people have adapted to that one guy everyone has seen, the guy that makes the clicking noise, to be able to see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that guy is like going through. Everyone knows him.
Yeah.
But all of those things are just so fascinating. Again, we're just scratching the surface of what you can do to the mind, because it's literally just a blank template of processing.
So, what's your view on like psychedelics to treat PTSD?
Psychedelics to treat PTSD, I don't know if the evidence is there for PTSD specifically. To treat, there's a lot of different conditions though. Great question. There are, I don't know what part of this I'm going to get into. Specifically for traumatic instances, different medications have been shown to be more beneficial. But trips are guided trips through a medical professional have shown to be incredibly beneficial.
Really?
And so not just a drug, so it's conjunctive therapy. So having also, someone who's trained to
that'd be crazy to trip with like somebody guiding your trip.
Or just think of like going back to peyote and a shaman. I mean, I have a really good friend who's Native American, and he went through a really cool peyote trip with his mom. And I wish I remembered the tribe that he's from, his family's from. But they have had this tradition for such a long time, and of course nobody else is able to do it. It was very controversial that he did it because he's only half Native American.
Oh man.
And so no white guys allowed. But they talk through the entire journey, and before even taking the peyote, they would talk about what they're trying to process through. It's very therapeutic, and it actually really plays into like modern psychoanalytics. But the whole idea of walking through what you're covering up just goes back to Freudism. It's just whatever you're burying down, you need to figure out.
Right.
You have to
whatever's like
out.
Broken, as some people call it in you. It's not broken, but just unresolved issues that you have. Wow. And everybody has those.
And you just have to acknowledge it. A lot of times it's just something that you force your mind to be able to move around it, if you will.
Like your nose.
Addressing it. Exactly.
Wow.
There's a lot to be said for hallucinogens and making you face what you're avoiding.
And which is why they can be so scary sometimes.
It's the same thing with dreams. It's the same thing with a lot of different things. The mind has a way of pushing to the surface what needs to be there. And of course, you just need to be able to be talking to the right person to be able to acknowledge that it's there.
Yeah. So talking to the right person, does that only include how professional they are and how much they know, how well trained they are, or is it like, this is kind of a weird question, but
You're saying like could a friend do the same thing that a professional?
well, yeah, or like, there's some people who have therapists that they, vibe with, whatever you want to say, they vibe with better. Is like, so say somebody goes to a therapist that has like 25 years of experiences and has all these types of things, but they just don't connect, they're just like on a personal level, they don't connect. But, they go to see another therapist that they have like, that only has like 5 years of experience, and they're able to just kind of more easily open up to that person.
Yeah, I think that's so important. That's a great point. Is that everyone has to find their person.
Okay.
Like when I was searching for a therapist for myself, you go through a process, and I think that it's very easy to be disheartened by not finding the right person right off the bat.
Right.
You have to find the person that gets you and gets through to you, and it's nothing against anybody else that's just not your person, but you just have to find the person that works with you. For me, I needed somebody that I don't need any sugarcoating. I just need to figure my stuff out. I need to know what I need to know.
Right. Give it to me straight, boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Other people need some coaxing. They need to be guided to where they need to be. I'm just like, these are my problems. I can't figure this out.
Yeah.
What do I need to do?
Right.
And again, as you said, I think that each person has their own balance to that.
Okay.
And, there are definitely therapists for everyone, but, it's just finding the right fix.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's really, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. I mean, it's just really, because I think something that I think we've learned in this century, kind of more recently, is that everybody could go to a therapist.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
would benefit so much from going to a therapist, even if you think your life is perfect,
Absolutely. I love, there's a really, really, such a cool, there's Israel Adesanya is a MMA fighter, and or like Tyson Fury. There's lots of professional athletes who, before even becoming famous, knew that there was a lot they had to figure out. And for some reason, there's this
Stigma?
Thank you. There's this stigma around talking to somebody for some reason that knows what they're talking about, and that makes no sense to me.
Right?
Is that you have questions?
Fucking shrink. They call him like, go talk to a shrink. I'm not talking to a shrink.
Exactly, and they would never. That was a great impression, by the way.
Yeah,
Spot
thank
on.
you.
That was
Thank
incredible.
you. Yeah.
But it's when you don't understand something and you need answers, and every single day, I think that everybody has that. Because we're all just pretending that we have the right answers, or going through life just pretending that we
Nobody
know what
actually
we're
knows.
doing. No one has a fucking clue. And talking to somebody who has spent a decade, knowing or learning
How
the
everybody
answers.
else kind of figures it out.
Learning the answers to those questions is, for some reason, there's a stigma around talking to somebody who has the answers. Or maybe not even the answers, but
ways to figure out
exactly
how to make your life.
The next step.
Yeah, the next step.
Because it's always a journey. It's always, and that's all that it is.
There's always levels.
Exactly.
Because we're in a simulation.
Yeah,
and
none of it's real.
And none of it's real, and you have
You
to
just
get
gotta
to the
figure out
next
the
level.
programming, yeah.
And the final level,
Yeah.
the winners, the people who get to death the fastest. I'm sorry. Too much. But anyways, yeah, no. So I don't know. Go to see a therapist. It could benefit you, and don't do drugs except the ones that you should do.
Exactly.
All right.
And each person has, I genuinely believe each person has, and within, drugs are the same thing with anything else in the body. It's all about moderation.
Of course.
And there aren't any drugs that are really specifically good for you. The thing is that life isn't that simple sometimes, though. So there's a lot of things that can be beneficial without being good for you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, like you said, a drug affects more than just one part of the body. It affects the whole body.
So you'd say, even marijuana, for example, is a great example, is that it does cause memory problems, and it does affect your lungs, and it does But, it acts on the limbic system, which is where you have emotions. It acts on your cerebellum, which is how you have coordination. And it also acts on your frontal cortex, which is how you have that slowed processing. It also speeds up your heart, and it affects a lot of your body. But the thing is that, again, just because it's a drug doesn't mean it doesn't have benefits or negative qualities. And I think that just like anything in life, you have to take the whole sum and not forget about the rest of it, which I think we all love to do, either side of the aisle. It's the fact that you think that it's all good or it's all bad. Mm-hmm. Neither is true. You just have to take the whole picture and then make the decision for yourself. And I think that for me, what one person needs at one point in their life is not for somebody else to judge, because you don't. Again, it's different for every individual.
Man, thank you so much, Evan, dude. That is great. That's what, like, the whole message that I want to convey with, like, everything that I do is that just, like, that you just put it into a statement and put it in a bottle, and that's why I love you, because
cheers, Doug. You
are connected. Yeah, and I'm so sorry about all this things going on here with things dying, and I wish you deserve a better quality recording, but
I think I give a fuck. That's hilarious.
All right, man. Well, thank you for coming out.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I am having a very bad day. Today, of all days, is the worst day that I've had in a very long time.
Listen, I'm not, well, I used to be like the meme king, then I kind of just fell off the wagon. But now, I like tune in. I kind of think, they're fads. They come and go real quickly. But there's some that just kind of stick with you. And I really like that one, because I don't even know that ESPN guy at all. I just see his face occasionally retweeted, and I just, today of all days. Oh, man. But yeah, so that was a good conversation with Evan, and he actually, he was excited because afterwards we hung out a little bit more, and he was like, man, I could have talked about so much more. And so we wrote some notes down for next time when we hang out, and I see him again whenever I go back to Athens if I ever do. And, we'll have a whole other episode then, and it'll get, we'll jump right into the meat of it, because he was like really excited to hear that. That's what I wanted to hear about, and oh man, he's such a great guy. But so this whole coronavirus thing, I lost my job. I've been put on furlough, which means it's like Merlot a little bit, except it means that I lost my job. Which in which case you would drink Merlot, but just for a short amount of 10 weeks. So what are you gonna do? I applied to Kroger, applied to Aldi's, Papa John's, unemployment. The whole, I did the thing that you're supposed to do. So we'll see what I get back. But it's just kind of, to be honest, I'm not mad about it. Because when I was in Athens, I was just so, I needed to get out of there. And I think a lot of people were feeling that way, especially in that point of the semester. I mean, the last 2 podcast episodes that I released, they were both kind of BS ones. One was over spring break. That was a real short one, just like a funny speech that I gave in high school. And it was like, I had already pre-recorded it, and I just did not want to put work in over spring break because I was taking that time to refresh. Because even the week before, I didn't have any content. I didn't have an interview that happened or anything. It was so busy that I couldn't get anything done, so I just read like an old story that I had from 1st or 2nd grade. So yeah, I was just feeling kind of overwhelmed, and then spring break got extended. Don't have work, don't have school. Again, I'm in a pretty bad place, I guess. But I mean, I saved up money. I got my parents' house that I can always come back to. They're buying groceries now. It's whatever. I feel like a spoiled kid, and I realize that I am a spoiled kid, because not everybody gets that. But yeah, I'm just gonna try to take advantage of. It doesn't all have to be bad. You know what I mean? It doesn't, just because we're all kind of screwed over for like a while, doesn't mean that we have to be. That's like money. That's money. It's not value. So being inside, I don't know. I'm gonna take this time to kind of, now that I've refreshed a little bit over the spring break, I'm gonna take this time to like. There's this post that Cara Delevingne posted. I don't know if she made it or not. It kind of looks like it, but I doubt it. And I'm sure you've probably seen it before, but it is really inspiring and kind of nice. It gives the whole thing like a little bit of a silver lining. So I'm just gonna read it here, and I'll probably leave you with that. I just can tell that people are already kind of getting annoyed with the whole coronavirus thing. We have very short attention spans in this day and age. And I think a lot of people are kind of, not that we can do anything about it because, government and whatnot, but I think a lot of people are kind of getting over the whole, okay, this is coronavirus. And now it's like, all right, how long is this going to last? And what can we do to get through it faster? So I'll leave you with this. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. Heart. Today,